Morocco is one of the most unique places I've ever lived as a digital nomad, but online I mostly see negativity when it comes to visiting and experiences in Morocco. Don't get me wrong, I understand that negative view. There were a lot of things that I disliked as well, especially as a woman traveling alone. I can definitely understand where a lot of those perspectives are coming from. But after 6 months in Tangier, it's genuinely one of my favorite places I've ever lived. So I'm going to break down all of the pros and cons so you get a full view of what it's like to live in Morocco, and you can decide if it might be worth living there a little bit for you, or even traveling if you're just planning to visit for a little bit. As usual, I'm going to compliment sandwich it, so we're gonna start with a couple of pros before we get to the cons. So one of the pros, first one, is weather. Seems like something super simple, but it is nice being close to Europe. If you're in Europe, but then the winter starts to get a little bit cold, you can just go over to Morocco, not too far away, and the weather is gonna be much better. The winter is not too cold and the summer isn't too hot. So I thought the weather is generally good. It varies for sure throughout Morocco, but generally the weather, I found it to be pleasant. Also, I don't know if this is just Tangier, but I noticed that in Tangier, the sky was consistently so blue. Some of the bluest skies I've ever seen. And I've lived in places that officially have better air quality than Tangier. So I don't think it's just an air quality thing or a pollution. I don't know what exactly it is. If you've visited Tangier or you've noticed this, or you live in Tangier, or I guess if you live in Tangier, you maybe you're just used to it. But for me, I noticed consistently, I look at the sky and the sky was so blue. I'm not in Tangier anymore, and I've noticed a difference living where I am now. You guys will see in a week. The sky is not as blue. I've been here for a couple months now. The sky is not as blue. So I thought maybe I was imagining it when I was in Tangier, but now I've been able to compare it to a few different cities. It is not as blue anywhere else that I've been. I've been to 30 different countries, probably over 100 cities. The sky is not as blue anywhere else as it is in Tangier. I don't know why, but I really loved it. And this kind of leads me into my next pro, actually, which is just that the city is gorgeous. It's by the water. You have some nice architecture. It's pretty simple, but I really like all those white buildings, a lot of greenery, and the greenery is really well maintained. I had assumed that it's the city taking care of it. Although I often wouldn't see gardeners. I don't know how they're taking such good care of it, but the greenery is always really well maintained, lots of flowers planted. It's just a really beautiful city, and I feel like it's underrated for its beauty. I had barely heard of Tangier. I'll talk about the reason that I even went to Tangier in the first place a little bit later on, but very underrated and absolutely gorgeous, kind of Mediterranean, not kind of, it is a Mediterranean city inside of Morocco. It doesn't feel like the rest of Morocco. It's such a special place. Another one is that I found Moroccans to be very warm and friendly. I arrived in Morocco after many months in Eastern Europe, so I think that friendliness and warmth was highlighted even more in comparison to what I had experienced for the previous 9 months. But they were really welcoming. I remember that throughout the entire 6 months I was there, anytime I would speak with someone and they'd ask me where I'm from, they would always tell me welcome to Morocco. People that I would barely know, really. I kind of know them from the gym or MMA or whatever. They would always tell me, if you ever need anything, if anything's going on, here's my number. If something happens, they were just, I felt like they were really looking out for me, especially when they would find out that I was there alone. It felt very, I guess, like a community in a certain way, especially compared to Canada's more individualistic society. I feel like everyone that I met, as soon as I got there, they were very welcoming, friendly, inviting me to their circles, wanting me to feel safe and comfortable in the city, telling me, like Morocco's, there are a lot of things that are difficult and complicated about living here. So if anything comes up, they're there for me. And I really appreciated that. And I felt that warmth from almost everyone in Morocco. They're really kind. I see a lot of people talk about how, I don't want to get to the cons yet, but a lot of people talk about the scams in Morocco. I think part of that is because a lot of people that visit Morocco go to Marrakesh, and in Marrakesh, I think, I didn't experience that in Marrakesh, but it's a different vibe. It's more of those markets, and they feel like they're constantly being scammed. I don't think I had a single scam attempt in Morocco that I can think of. The prices were really fair and consistent. And again, I was in Tangier, I wasn't in Marrakesh, so maybe that could have been a little bit different, but I didn't have that feeling that people talk about. And I've had that feeling before in other countries where you feel like people are constantly out to get you, where people are constantly trying to scam you. I didn't have that in Morocco. I don't know why, because I feel that everyone I see on the internet talk about Morocco talks about how much they're trying to get scammed. And again, I think it could be due to the city. I visited Marrakesh, but I was only there for a few days, so maybe I just got lucky and didn't experience that. I don't know. But I can say for sure that in Tangier, There was absolutely none of that. They also speak a lot of languages, which I was super impressed by how many languages the average Moroccan speaks, and speaks well. I was able to get around very easily with French, which was amazing because Darija is a lot harder than French. And there are even a lot of people, specifically in Tangier, because it's so close to Spain, there are a lot of people that speak Spanish as well, which was really nice. And even though I don't understand Darija, I find it a really beautiful language to listen to. So it was just pleasant to listen to. That seems like something small, but I've been in places where I can say it because it's my own language. There are some Spanish-speaking countries where cities, where the Spanish is so irritating that I want to put my headphones on so that I can block out the sounds, because it gives, I have felt a bit nauseous sometimes, or dizzy by the sounds. Darija is nothing like that. It's so beautiful sounding, especially women speaking. It sounds so beautiful. Men can sound a bit aggressive when they speak, but it's just so beautiful. The sounds in Morocco, just thinking about Morocco is very pleasant language to listen to. I'll leave it at that. So another one is cost of living. Cost of living is very low for digital nomads that are earning in any kind of strong currency like dollars, euros, pounds, etc. It's going to be very solid compared to where you're from. I made another video that is all about cost of living, really breaking down the cost. If you want to see it, I'll link it in the description. But just to give you a little bit of a rundown, Airbnb is overpriced compared to the local rental market. But even with that Airbnb, 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom, including all the utilities, Wi-Fi, everything like that, it was under $1,000. I think it was about $900 per month. So really solid pricing. Food was pretty inexpensive. It depends where you go. Taxis were extremely cheap. So it's really easy to get around. Again, I have a video breaking all that down more in depth if you do want to see that, but cost of living is good here. Food is pretty good as well. There are a lot of foods that I liked. I love couscous on Fridays. Adore couscous. Just thinking about all these foods, I'm starting to miss Morocco thinking about it. Pastilla, that's my favorite food, specifically the seafood one. I made another video talking about foods as well, so I'll link all these videos that I'm mentioning in the description, but there were a lot of really good foods in Morocco. So if you like trying out local foods, or for me, food is a big part of traveling. I really like trying the local foods wherever I go. And so if that's something that you're looking for or something that you're interested in, Morocco is really good food. I definitely would recommend if you're kind of a food tourist. Is that a thing? I don't know. If part of your vacation or part of your travels is discovering the food, Morocco is a cool place to discover some different foods. Last pro before I get to some of the cons is the high-speed train system in Morocco. I was really impressed by it. Similar to the high-speed trains in Europe, so it's not anything crazy that doesn't exist in the world, but I was surprised and impressed to see that level of infrastructure in Africa, something that you have in Europe. We don't have that in Canada. In America, you don't have those high-speed trains. So I was really impressed to see that in Morocco. You can very quickly get from major city to major city comfortably in those high-speed trains. And so I used those a few times actually, and yeah, can't recommend them enough. Very impressed. Now, let's get to a few cons. I'll save some more of the pros that I have for the end. But let's address some of the negatives because they do exist, and I don't want to pretend that they don't exist just because I loved Morocco so much, specifically Tangier. Anyway, one is that Morocco is an extremely conservative country. This is absolutely true. The way that you dress, the interactions, or rather the separation between men and women, those things are all real. For example, most gyms in Morocco are separated by men's days and women's days. So I actually had to get 2 separate gyms so that I'd have a gym to go to every day. My Pilates class, or not just the class, the studio is only for women. MMA, that was only for women, and they're serious about it. They shut the blinds so that no one can, because women are training with other hijabs, so they really, it's serious. Okay, the windows are shut so that no one can see the women's hair. So it's really intensely separated. Even there were some massage places, because I was trying to get a sports massage, and all the sports massage places, there were massage places that were for men only and massage places that are for women only, and it's just, everything just feels really separated. It's not necessarily a con for me that it's separated. I actually like having the women's only spaces, but I guess the con is just that it's slightly inconvenient because there are so many things that I guess you can't access, or you can't access on. It's just an extra step. Let's put it that way. Very different. I grew up in Canada, and we have a really open society. It's not conservative at all, and so it was just very different. And so if you don't want to live in a very conservative place, then Morocco may not be for you. Another thing is if you're visibly LGBT, Morocco is a difficult place to live. One thing is just to be there for a week and try to blend in for a week, but actually living there, you're gonna have to hide that. So That's just something to consider. That's real. It is enforced. So yeah, having grown up in Canada, being in such a, I don't know how to frame it. I think conservative is too light of a word for it, because I'm not against conservative values necessarily, but such a closed society, I guess, if that's the opposite of open. Yeah, closed. A closed society. I think that's actually one of the main reasons that I would never live there long term. I grew up in Canada, so I'm just used to a more open society where people can kind of do whatever they want and everyone kind of stays out of your business. And so I would go back to Morocco to stay for a couple months again, maybe a few times. I'll go. I'd be happy to spend more time in Morocco, but it would never be a place that I'd consider living long term, just because it's not aligned with my values. And this isn't a critique on their values, it's just a difference. Those are the values that exist in the country. I'm not criticizing it at all. I'm a visitor. I respect the values while I'm there. But it's just not aligned with my values. So it's not a place that I would live long term or raise kids or anything like that. If that's something that you're considering. Or if conservative values are really important to you and you see that your country is becoming too liberal, too open, not your thing, then Morocco could be a cool place to move. And so again, it's really not necessarily a critique. It's just, for me, it's not exactly a good fit. But I know people that are Muslim and have moved to Morocco from other countries, like the UK, for example, in order to be in a more conservative culture, in order to be in a society that's more aligned with your values. I think that's really what it's about. So this was a con for me, but not necessarily a con for everyone. For some of you, it could actually be a pro. So as part of this, I don't want to call it conservative. I don't want to call the con that it's conservative necessarily, because that's not just necessarily something that I think is always a bad thing, but maybe the closed, let's just call it that. Oh, I don't know what to call it. It's, what's a good word for this? Because of this aspect of the culture, there's also a lot of harassment in Morocco, and I think this is a pretty big con, specifically for women. It's kind of weird how all these the more conservative a country is, it almost seems like the more harassment there is. Meanwhile, idealistically, you would think that in a more conservative country, people would kind of be like monks, you know what I mean? And they would behave themselves, let's say, but it's the complete opposite. Right now, I am in probably the most socially liberal country that I have ever lived in, more than Canada. And men don't bother you really at all, because I guess they're used to women dressing however they want, and they're just used to it. I remember someone from a different part of Morocco made a joke that in Tangier, men act like they've never seen a woman before, and I think that's it was a joke, but it's true. You could be dressed completely normally, pretty covered. Not to say that if you're not covered, you deserve to be harassed, but you would think that if you're covered, it's just, what is even calling attention? But they just see a woman and they genuinely act like animals. And that's definitely a con. I got used to it. I would say at first it was pretty shocking, but I got used to it over time. Also, I didn't really understand what they're saying to me, so I can only be so bothered by men shouting things that I don't understand. I don't know. They're just making face sounds at me and making faces, I guess. It can't... For me, I just can't see the sense in it bothering me, but I know that for some people it really, really bothers them, makes them extremely uncomfortable. Obviously, not all men are going to say something to you. There are a lot of well-educated men in Morocco that are not going to be harassing women on the street, but there are so many that pretty much anytime you go out, you're going to have some man yelling at you from a car or across the street or whatever, or walking by you. Someone is going to say something to you. If you don't understand like I don't, then I think it's pretty easy to brush it off. But if you know that it's something that really makes you uncomfortable, it may not be the best place for you to live. I think, as I mentioned, I got used to this harassment and it didn't really bother me, but it did kind of, honestly, it turned me into a little bit of a misandrist. It really changed the view that I had on men. When I first arrived in Morocco, obviously I can acknowledge that there are differences between men and women, but I guess I didn't see so much separation. I grew up in Canada where everything is just so mixed. I didn't see a huge difference between my male friends, my female friends, and things like that. I didn't have strong feelings, I guess, either way. But after living in Morocco for so long and just seeing men behave that way, even though I know good men, I couldn't help but shake the feeling, and I still haven't been able to shake the feeling that the way that I saw men act in Morocco is their natural state, and that in the country that I grew up in and the country I'm in now, they've just been trained out of it or educated out of it, I guess, which is good. It's good if that's the case. And I don't know if that's really true. Maybe that's not the natural state for men, but I got this idea in my head that that is how they naturally are, and they're just suppressing it in other countries. And I'm not saying it's true. It might not be true. This isn't like a man-hate podcast here, but I haven't been able to shake that feeling. It just changed how I view men a little bit, which, yeah, not ideal. And I've spoken with other women who have visited Morocco as solo travelers, and yeah, they had really bad experiences with the men there as well. And they probably don't want to go back. The ones that I've spoken with, I would go back. It wouldn't deter me from visiting. It's a con, but it didn't bother me that much, is my point. But it did change the way that I see men, for sure, after 6 months of living there. And when I first arrived in Morocco, I didn't understand why the local women were I noticed that they had a different attitude towards men than I did. We would go into a place with a lot of men and they wanted to leave. And I just didn't feel that. Why would I leave just because there are men here? They're just men. And after 6 months living in Morocco, my view of men really changed. And so now I understand, growing up in a place like that where that's all you've ever seen, I understand why a lot of Moroccan women have a pretty negative view of men, because just in 6 months, my view changed. So I can't imagine growing up only seeing that. It's hard to imagine. It's hard to imagine a whole life growing up in Morocco. Anyway, on a lighter note, the postal system and ordering is awful in Morocco. Every time I tried to order stuff, especially if it's ordered from a different country, it was just a complete and total mess. I wouldn't recommend trying to order stuff. It might get lost or just really delayed. Not ideal. And another one, I talked about this in one of my last videos about culture shocks. Some of the bathrooms only have these squat toilets. Every time I see these squat toilets, it's a complete mess. There's just water all over the floor and it's kind of flooding. It just looks like a total mess every single time. And so most places luckily have Western style toilets that you're used to, but some places only have those, so you just have to hold it if you're in one of those places. Small con, but just something to mention. That I don't think that's something that would seriously deter anyone, but I thought I'd mention it since it is something that I noticed. And the final thing, I talked about this a little bit in the culture shocks one as well, and I can't speak too much to it because I'm not Black, but I did notice instances of racism. I talked a little bit about one of those instances in that last video about culture shocks if you want the full story, but I noticed Black people being treated worse in Morocco. I even noticed Moroccans treat other Moroccans worse than they treat white foreigners. There's a history of the French in Morocco, so I think that's part of it as well. But I did notice racism. So I know that I've seen a lot of people that make content online, Instagram, YouTube, and things like that, and they talk about destinations that are good or bad, or their experiences in different destinations as a Black person. I would go to one of those videos because I really can't speak to it. I noticed with distance that Black people are treated differently. And so if you are Black and you don't want to deal with that, I would look for those videos online and see how they perceive Morocco. Maybe I just have a totally wrong perception, so I'll leave that to someone else to talk about, but I just wanted to flag that as something that you can look further into if that's something that you might be concerned about, but not something that I can fully speak to. Anyway, there are a couple more pros before we wrapped up. As I said, we were gonna compliment sandwich this, so I really did love Tangier specifically. Tangier has such a slow and relaxing pace of life. It feels there isn't a lot of hustle culture. They just seem very relaxed. I know that some digital nomads look for cities that feel high growth, inspiring, like Dubai, for example, or places where they're going to be surrounded by a lot of wealth to be inspired, and it's all about work and more money. And I'm not knocking that at all. I think that makes a lot of sense. You want to kind of design your environment. You want to design your environment in a way that aligns with what you're trying to achieve. So I think that makes total sense. But if you're looking for a more chill place, Because for me, for example, I intrinsically have a lot of motivation. I don't really need a lot of external things motivating me. So I actually like that. I am very much a person that's very focused on work. So it's nice when the people around me kind of contrast me. As weird as it sounds, it's weird because in some ways you want to feel like you're in a society where you fit in, but in some ways you want to be balanced out by your society. I don't know exactly how to explain it, but I appreciated it. I think that's what I'm trying to get to. I appreciated that very relaxed vibe that people just feel like they're just living, they're hanging out, they're just relaxed. There's a relaxed vibe to it. So if that's something that you're looking for, then Tangier specifically, I don't know if it's all of Morocco, but Tangier specifically could be great. If you're looking for a more intense work-focused place, I think there are other cities in Morocco that are good for that, but that's something that you could look into as well. Growing up in Canada, I think this is, at least Canada and the United States, what you do for work and just work in general is just a huge part of your life. It's your identity. Not for everyone, obviously. There are people that have different ideas, but it's really important. Your career is super important in North America, or at least Canada and the US. And in Tangier, that's not the case at all. There are a lot of people that you don't even know what they do for work. You don't even talk with your friends about what they do for work that much. Maybe a little bit just to know, but it's just not as big of a point. There's not as big of an emphasis on it. And some people just don't work, or some people just do random gigs to make enough money to get by and, just live. It's just a different vibe, a relaxed vibe. I touched on this briefly before, but the location is excellent. You're really close to Europe, so if you need to get out of the Schengen area, but you want to stay nearby to go back afterwards, it's a great place to go. Or if you just need to escape the cold in the winter, great place to go for that as well. So yeah, location is excellent. The time zone is pretty good if you're working European or US hours. It works out pretty well. That was actually one of the initial reasons that I looked into Morocco, was because I wanted a warm place that wasn't far from Europe throughout the winter, and it ended up being perfect for that. Also, in Tangier, I think other parts of Morocco as well, but in Tangier, because I was in Tangier, so I'll speak to that, there are endless opportunities for weekend trips. Chefchaouen is not too far away. It's this blue city, really, really beautiful. Everything is blue. It's so unique, the entire city, and it's surrounded by mountains, really gorgeous. You can also go to Tétouan. There are also beaches that are not too far away. A lot of opportunities for weekend trips, and also longer trips. There's just so much to do in Morocco. I went to the Sahara Desert. No matter where you are in Morocco, there are a lot of cool nearby cities to go to and to check out. So lots to do there. I think it's an awesome place, both for a nomad, if you're going to be living there for a little bit longer, and also just as a tourist. I think Morocco is just such a cool country. Now, for digital nomads specifically, I found it to be great for remote work. Wi-Fi speeds were really excellent. Electricity is consistent. I didn't have any issues with that. Towards the end of my stay there, I had a couple issues, but it was because of the construction that they were doing on my street. They were redoing the ground and unplugging some of the wires and stuff like that, or I don't know exactly how it works, but basically they were cutting electricity constantly. But that was specific to my street, just some construction that they were doing for the upcoming World Cup. So that's not a widespread issue. It was just an issue for me, I guess. Anyway, out of all the places in Morocco, the reason that I picked Tangier is because when I was a teenager, I read The Alchemist, and the main character in The Alchemist spends a couple months in Tangier, and I guess I wanted to experience that. I reread The Alchemist a lot of times while I was there, specifically the part in Tangier, and it really lived up to everything that I hoped it would be. I loved Tangier, very, very special place to me, and I don't think it's for everyone, but I just felt so at peace there, so good there. I think I've talked about this before, but there are some places that just fit. You just feel good in a place. And I remember that in Tangier, that was, as soon as I got over the whole harassment thing, because that was a little bit troubling at first, as soon as I got over that, I just felt so at peace there, so good. There was, I don't know, the energy, the vibe, whatever you want to call it, felt really good for me. It fit with me. And yeah, I think it'd be a cool place to check out. As I said, it's not for everyone. I've met a lot of people who didn't like it, so look into it, research it yourself. But I was very sad to leave, and I'll definitely be back. If you end up visiting, I hope that you do enjoy it. And I will see you next week in my new spot. It's a secret for now. I'll probably, if you want to see where, on Instagram, I've probably already posted where it is. So you can check out my stories if you want to know where I am. Otherwise, I'll see you next week here.